Okay, looks like we are streaming live on YouTube, and at 5:02, I will call the Quality of Life Committee to order for October 20th. If we could get a roll call, please.
Counselor Cassett?
Here.
Counselor Rivera?
Here.
Counselor Villarreal?
Present.
And Chair O'Merrill-Worth.
I'm here, thank you. With that, we will go to approval of the agenda. And I think, are there changes from staff?
Madam Chair, I'm not aware of any changes from staff.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I was just reading an email. The presentation that we had for the presentation on early childhood care in Santa Fe will postpone, so we'll be not hearing that item under presentation. So if are no other changes, if we could get a motion to approve the agenda as amended, that'd be great.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call on approval of the agenda as amended?
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal?
Yes.
Chair O'Merrill-Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. From there, we'll move to approval of the consent agenda. There are 3 items on consent. Does anybody want to hear any of those items?
Yes. Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item B as in boy, I wanted to pull because I had some amendments to discuss.
Okay. Other
And
councilors? Oh, sorry.
I thought we were.
We are. That's
Okay.
under discussion.
Oh, right. Okay. That's all.
Can you tell I could read your mind?
Yeah, pretty good.
Any other items to pull from consent besides item B? If not, is there a motion?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. If we could get a roll call on that.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal?
Yes.
And Chair O'Merrill-Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Fantastic. Now to approval of the minutes for October 6th, Quality of Life Committee meeting. Are there changes to the minutes from staff and or the committee? If not, is there a
Move for
motion?
approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the October 6th meeting minutes. If we could get a roll call on those.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal?
Yes.
And Chair O'Merrill-Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. So from there, we will go to our consent agenda, item B, and Councilwoman Villarreal, you pulled this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to add some language based on the legislation that we've supported in the past and kind of values aligned. And I believe you all got it in an email, but I'm not quite sure. So it hasn't been placed in the format, but I wanted to make sure these items be it further resolved language got included. Primarily because we have focused on these issues before and they may come up in this legislative session. So I don't know if you want me to read them out loud.
Yeah, so let me, so the email that I received, and I don't know if the whole committee received it, but apparently the staff is in a training, so they weren't able to put it in the format. So that's why it's not in the packets. But we can discuss it tonight, and then they'll draft it for the appropriate format, put it in the appropriate format tomorrow so that it will be ready when it goes to governing body. So I don't know, Counselor, if you want to talk about, did you get this email with the?
I did. I think that, I guess I was curious if anyone else did, because I just saw staff listed on it. So it looks like Councillor Cassett received it. I don't know, Councillor Rivera, did you receive it?
Yes, I did.
I
Okay,
think since it's not in our packets and not available to the public, we probably shouldn't take official action on it. But if you want to talk, maybe like you did at finance about each of them, and maybe a little bit of the language, and we can just have a conversation about it without taking
Sure.
action on them, since we don't have them available in the packet. That's probably what we should do.
well, I think it's up to the group. If there's more information you need, or maybe it doesn't make complete sense, you'd rather see it in that format, we can do that. We can also vote on it. Can we let Jesse Guillen in? I think he's in the waiting room.
Oh, okay, great.
Can we let Regina, Director Wheeler in as well?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and read them. Madam Chair, does that work? So this is not the appropriation side of things. This is really just legislation, or just endorsing and supporting legislation that may occur at the legislative session. And also there is language that was in our resolution, our legislative priorities legislation last year, and I wanted to make sure it continues to be placed in there. So the language to be included or to be added is to be it further resolved that the City of Santa Fe supports and endorses any legislation that focuses on slowing down the timeline for eviction and improving opportunities for mitigation between renters and landlords. Be it further resolved that the City of Santa Fe continues to support paid sick leave legislation as reinforced by our resolution number 2021-11, unanimously passed in 2021. Or was it 2020? I think it was 2021.
It was 2021. It was January.
Okay. Thank you. That's right. We corrected that. Okay. So, and then another one, be it further resolved that the City of Santa Fe supports and endorses any legislation that replenishes and seeks a reoccurring funding source to support MFA's Housing Trust Fund. And last, be it further resolved that the governing body supports and endorses the establishment of a regional drug treatment facility that would serve the residents of Santa Fe and northern New Mexico, established and funded by revenue derived from the taxation of the legal sale of recreational cannabis. That was in our packet last year. So I thought that would still be valid in this legislative session possibly, but so that's it. Nothing that we haven't necessarily talked about before, and reinforces our support for affordable housing and preventing eviction, as well as supporting paid sick leave legislation. So I will yield the floor and answer any questions from my colleagues.
Do we have questions from the committee on these? I guess, right, just Jesse, so can we act on these given that we don't have them in the packet and we don't have them in their formal, so we're basic. I just don't know. I think we can only talk about them. I don't think we can vote on them because we don't have them available to the public, and we don't have, while I don't think the wording's going to change, I don't think we should be voting on something we don't have in the proper format in the public packet. Jesse.
I think that we can treat this like any other amendment that would be made during a meeting. So no, we don't have them written out, but there are often times where amendments are made during the meeting and voted on. So I think we can treat it like that. Before joining, I was going to suggest that Councillor Vieta read them into the record, which she did. So I think that is appropriate.
Okay, well, we don't have anybody from the city attorney's office, so we will go with that, and hopefully it's okay. I just worry again. Yeah, all right. Questions from the committee on these additions? I do have one question, since it doesn't look like anybody else does. On the last one, saying that the drug treatment facility will be funded by revenue derived from taxation on the legal sale of recreational cannabis. Is that is last time that language was in the resolution in the prior year?
Madam Chair, that's what I was told. Jesse, can you confirm that? Because we were talking about a couple pieces of language that was in the priorities resolution last year that was just left out that still is relevant.
Yes, Madam Chair, councilors. So prior to finalizing the legislation, I went through with staff and asked them if, to test. Sorry, I don't have very good internet here.
You're breaking up
To
a
see
little
if they
bit.
had been addressed in the previous.
Jesse, you're muted now. Maybe you can move to a place where we can hear you.
That's what I was trying to do. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
So I asked staff to let me know if various items had been addressed in the previous legislature. And I think on this particular item, there was a little miscommunication with what exactly it meant. And so when Councilor Villarreal asked about it, I went back to relevant staff and asked if it should be included and sort of give them a little more description about what it actually meant. And they said, yeah, we can put it back in. So the wording is exactly the way it was last year.
So we directed that there be an earmark on the revenue stream last year, the same language, funded by revenue derived from the taxation of the legal sale of recreational cannabis.
Yes, what Councilor Villarreal read into the record is what was included in the resolution that was adopted last year.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, Councilor, at this point, now that we know that recreational cannabis has been, like last year, we didn't know whether they would make recreational cannabis legal and create that as a funding stream. I'm just wondering if we want to say that we support and endorse the establishment of a regional drug treatment facility and not direct that it come from a particular revenue source. Like, how important is that to you? Because I think we want it, whether it comes from that revenue stream or they find another one. And I don't know that I want to direct them about how to use that funding stream, because I think we may want, some of that money coming to local governments untethered for our own priorities. And I don't know what the push and pull would be. So I just wonder how important that last phrase is this time around.
I am ambiguous about that. All I wanted to make sure is that we were really reiterating the need for a regional drug treatment facility for Northern Mexico, regardless of where the funding source is derived or where the funding source is coming from. So yeah, I'm not sure actually where that initial language with recreational cannabis was, where it came from initially. I don't know if it was from our own staff.
Okay, I just
Do
wonder.
You all know?
Yeah, I just wonder if we could strike that last part and just say, hey, we want a regional drug treatment facility, and leave it up to them to figure out how to fund it. We have a couple hands up. First go to Councilwoman Cassett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say that I'm in agreement with that comment that I don't necessarily, a certain funding stream doesn't matter as much as just the support that this happens. So not necessarily in a specifically funded way. But I was actually looking at the first one. Be it further resolved that the city of Santa Fe supports and endorses any legislation that focuses on slowing down the timeline. And I was curious about your thoughts, Councilwoman Villarreal, changing the language that just says any legislation that slows down the timeline for eviction and improves opportunities. It just feels like a little bit stronger of a statement than the focus is on. Are you amenable?
That works. Yeah, I think that was the intention anyway. I was just utilizing language that was coming from one of state representatives that's carrying that bill. So as long as we are focused on, say that again, Councillor Cassett.
That the city of Santa Fe supports and endorses any legislation that slows down the timeline for eviction and improves opportunities for mitigation between renters and landlords. Just feels a little.
Yeah, I like that
A
better.
little stronger. So. Okay,
Sounds good.
Thank you.
You
Councilor
catch that,
Rivera.
Jesse? I'm just wondering if Jesse's catching that.
Well, again, this is why I wish we had this. I hate drafting in the air.
Mhm.
Councilor Rivera.
Thank you. With regards to the last item, it makes it sound like the drug treatment facility would be specifically for those people that may have issues with cannabis, but that's not correct, right? It's really all drugs that people may be addicted to or need help with.
In the language, are you asking me or?
Yes, sorry, Councilor
Okay.
Vieira.
Thank you, Councilor Rivera. This specifically was saying that the funding source would come from taxation of the legal sale of recreational cannabis, but it would support the establishment of a regional drug treatment facility in general to support any addiction possibilities.
Yeah, so I would support really any, the funding source coming from anywhere. I don't, not necessarily think it has to come from the sale of recreational cannabis, but would support really any funding source that they could come up with to deal with a regional drug treatment facility. I think that would be appropriate. And then with regards to the first one with the eviction, I agree with the language that Councilwoman Cassett put forward, but just wanted to ask, so this has nothing to do with the moratorium that was established for COVID purposes, right? This is just a general statement about evictions and improving or that mitigation between renters and landlords, right? This is to go long-term just for what we're dealing with now. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's actually, it's in an effort to be proactive about looking at eviction because we don't know how long the moratorium is going to last. I mean, I don't know the timeline for that, but I assume it's not necessarily going to continue for the next couple of years. So I think it was really just to be proactive about ways to support community members to limit and slow down potential evictions in New Mexico, well, especially in Santa Fe. So.
And for the current moratorium, was that implemented by the legislature, the governor, or the courts? Do we know that?
I believe the courts.
I believe so too. So this is legislation that you know of that's coming forth from a particular legislator that's introducing this language?
There's a few legislators that are supporting this. I just don't know if it will make it on the call for the governor, but I'm doing this proactively just in case it does.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. So Councilwoman, are you okay with deleting the last part of that piece on the drug treatment facility?
Yes, would you read how it would?
Okay, so it'll be it further resolved that the governing body supports and endorses the establishment of a regional drug treatment facility that would serve the residents of Santa Fe and northern New Mexico, period.
I'm just wondering if we have to say anything about the funding,
I think
any kind of funding.
I think we just want them to establish it. Let them figure out how to fund it.
And I'm wondering, I mean, I didn't come up with this language. I just thought it was an important topic that was added to our priorities last year that I thought should continue carrying on. I was curious if my colleagues, I thought Director Ochoa would be on, but I wanted to know if the county did establish a clinic, but I wasn't quite sure if that was finalized. Does anybody know about that?
I don't. Oh,
Madam Chair?
here's Director Brown.
Good evening, everyone in the council and members. Councilor Villarreal, I think that it is finalized. I forgot the name of the location, but it has been finalized.
Great. So in that case, Director Brown, do you know if there's another, I guess I'm just thinking about this language still. I think it's important, but do you know of any other regional drug treatment facility that has been in the works or in conversation that we need to support with this legislation? Because I want to say this language was added because of the county clinic.
Madam Chair, Council Villarreal, I wish that Director Cho was here, because originally when the county building was being built, we were going to create and build and develop a treatment center across the street as a transitional housing spot. But I don't know if that is what this was intended for, because we did not finalize that development.
Okay, that's good to know. So can we do this, Madam Chair? I would like to consider the first three and then hold off on that fourth one until we get further information from Director Ochoa, because I just want to make sure that it wasn't in response to what already has happened with the county clinic, and if there was some other development that we don't know of, maybe Director McCoy can shed some light on this.
Director McCoy has her hand up, so let's go to her.
Madam Chair, Councilor, I just wanted to let the committee know that Kira will be joining us shortly. She was in another meeting, but will be joining us in a few minutes.
Okay, well, it may be that we need to move on. And I think, this, if we don't adopt this now, we can talk about it later too. So it's not the
It looks like, I think Coach Director Ochoa is here.
Is she?
There she is, yes.
Oh, there she is. She just popped in. All right. Director Ochoa, we have a question for you. Thanks for joining us. I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had planned to add language to our legislative priorities that was on the priorities resolution last year, and it was specific to supporting and endorsing the establishment of a regional drug treatment facility that would serve the residents of Santa Fe and northern New Mexico, established and funded by revenue derived from the taxation of the legal sale of recreational cannabis. So the question was, I was curious if you knew if that legislation or that language last year was included because we were wanting to support the county clinic that did, as we just discovered, it did finally open, that was finalized. But if there was some other regional drug treatment facility that we should know about, that language in our legislative priorities should be included, or maybe we're not in that space anymore. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I don't think the language was referring to the County Crisis Center. I think it was aspirational on the part of the drafters. But I think the important distinction is that the city's cannabis revenue would not support a regional facility. We support is a nebulous term. I think in this, we're going to say that we approve of this, and we support it, but not financially. I think that's why we removed that language. It's obviously a needed thing, but the city's cannabis revenue, we have to leave a little more as to what kinds of things we would support literally without funding. Does that answer the question?
It does, and I guess we had modified it before you jumped on to actually remove that where the funding source would come from, and then just say that we'd support the establishment of a regional drug treatment facility that would serve the residents of Santa Fe and northern New Mexico, period. And so I guess the question to you, is that still relevant and valid to be placed on our legislative priorities resolution this year?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, absolutely, yes. It's still a need.
Yes.
And then we hope the state will do that.
Sounds good. Okay, then let's keep it on since we got expertise from Director Ochoa.
Okay, and we're okay with taking off that tail end about where the funding comes from, just to be
Yes,
clear. Okay,
please.
so we're just saying we want this thing established. We're not picky about where the money comes from. They can figure out how to fund it.
Yes.
But I do think it's really important that we're clear that any cannabis revenue coming to us, we do not want to tie up, because I think we have ideas about how to spend that. We need to talk about that. Okay, so if there are no other questions from the committee, do we have a motion? What you did you make a motion, or you just read the things?
I move to approve the, I don't need to read them again, do I?
Item B with the 4 be it further resolved additions that you've read.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, can we get a roll call, please?
Madam Chair, this does include the changes from that Councillor Cassett made to the first one.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So again, this is why I hate this drafting in the air, people. But yes, so the changes to the first be it resolved about evictions, and the changes to the last be it resolved, taking off the phrase about the funding. And we will put this in the packet as it moves forward. And Jesse, if you're there, you've got all that, right?
Madam Chair, Councilor, yes, I will review it and get
Okay.
it correct.
You can call me tomorrow and we can talk about it if you wonder what we did. All right. If we could get a roll call on that.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
and Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. With that, we will go to the item that we postponed for this meeting, an ordinance relating to the City of Santa Fe Uniform Traffic Ordinance, amending section 12-10-1.10 to insert a clause stating that a person who violates a provision of section 12-10-1.10 of the UTO is guilty of a penalty assessment misdemeanor, and to add and increase penalties in Schedule A, the traffic violation penalty assessment schedule. I don't know how we want to handle this. We do have Kyle Hibner here with the city attorney's office. Kyle, I don't know, do you have things you want to tell us? Would you rather we ask questions? I know the reason we postponed this is I think we had a number of things we were looking for answers, and you thought you could get back. And so I don't know if you want to maybe go through some of that. I'm open to suggestions here.
Chair Romero-Worth, I can do that if you would prefer. Captain Tapia from the police department is also on this call.
Oh, great. Thank you, Captain Tapia, for being here.
So yeah, it's up to you. It's up to the committee. If you prefer that I just kind of go through some of the questions and give answers, I'm certainly happy to do that.
Why don't we start there, and that'll just get us kicked off, and the committee then may have more questions after that.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up my notes here. So I'm gonna start with some questions from last time from Councillor Villarreal. One of the questions was, when did this become an ordinance? It looks like it was at 2010. I'd already given some numbers from 2018 through 2021. So just from 2020 through 2017, it looks like there were 15 citations issued under this section. There was also a question about an emissions inspections program. So the way Albuquerque does that program is that they tie it to registration, meaning you have to show proof of getting emissions inspection before MVD will get you will let you renew your registration. So I have been working with Aaron on this. I think to have that be an option, there would need to be some coordination with the state, namely MVD. So we're looking at the legal parameters if that's something that we are able to do. Moving on to questions from Councilor Rivera. I did create a map with the approximate location of where each of these citations have been issued from 2018 through 2021. If I can share my screen and if the committee would find that appropriate, or useful, I can put that up now. I don't know if I have, oh, it looks like I do. Let me find it. Okay, can the committee see the map? So like I said, this is the approximate location for each of the citations that have been issued from 2018 through 2021. You can of course see they seem to kind of be centered around downtown area. And I hope Captain Tapia will correct me if I'm wrong. I would suspect that is likely because the Blitz program that was going on last summer was focused on the downtown area. I think it was slow and quiet, something like that. Is it okay if I stop sharing my screen?
Sure.
And I'd be happy to get that map up if anyone would like. Councilor Rivera also had some questions regarding some demographical information. Unfortunately, on the citations, they're really the only demographical information you can get from that is going to be the year that people were born. So there was a range on birth year, 1963 being the oldest person cited, 2005 being the youngest. I did break it down further by rough age group. So 1963 to 1970 accounted for 3 people. 1971 through 1980 accounted for 2 citations. 1981 through 1990 accounted for 4 citations. And 1991 through 2005 accounted for 70 citations. Like I mentioned, I think last time there were 79 citations issued. Looks like 78 of those were for noise violations. I would suspect that the other one was also, but I could not tell from the citation if it was for noise or for smoke. Councilor Cassett had some questions on the age of the vehicles. So again, as I did for the year of birth, I also did that for model year of the vehicle. And so the age of vehicle ranges from 1979 as the oldest and 2021 as the newest. I broke it down by year also. So 1979 model year to 1985 accounted for 3 citations. 1986 through 1990 accounted for 1. 1991 through 1995, there were no citations for that time frame. 1996 through 2000 accounted for 11. 2001 through 2005 accounted for 18. 2006 through 2010 accounted for 16. 2011 through 2015 accounted for 21. And 2016 through 2021 accounted for 7. 2 of the citations did not have a model year. So that's why the numbers may not add up quite to the 79. Moving on to some questions from Chair Romero Worth. So it looked like 7 of the citations were issued were for repeat offenders. I think I said last time there were 53 convictions. 20 of those were people that decided to pay the penalty assessment. So whenever an officer stops someone and is issuing a citation, the person cited can just choose to pay the penalty assessment with the officer, or they can choose to go to court. And then there was a question about a fixed ticket. So I tried to think of other places in the UTO that has something similar. It's not the best comparison, but the one I could think of was under the mandatory financial responsibility section. That does have a specific provision that says if someone brings in proof that they had valid insurance at the time of the stop, that they will not be convicted on it. That was the closest thing I could think that's currently in the UTO, Uniform Traffic Ordinance. I'm not sure if there could be some language added specifically saying that if someone fixes it beforehand, that they won't be convicted of the muffler problem or of the loud muffler. So I think that was the questions that I had in my notes, but I'll be happy to try to answer any more questions if anyone has any more.
Okay, and I think last time we had this conversation, provided some misinformation. It's my understanding that in order for us to do an emissions program, and you alluded to this, so Bernalillo can do this because the legislature gave them the authority to do the emissions program through the New Mexico Air Quality Act, and they would have to do that for us to be able to do an emissions program, or for like if we wanted to do a regional one, say Santa Fe, the city of Santa Fe and Santa Fe County, or if they wanted to just give the county that responsibility, take us out of it. So to do an emissions program would require a change to give a local government authority to do that. Is that your understanding as well?
Chair Romero-Worth, you are correct that the Air Quality Control Act does specifically give Albuquerque and Bernalillo County the authority. That is part of the legal parameters that I mentioned earlier that Aaron and I are looking at to see if there needs to be a change to the Air Quality Control Act for the city of Santa Fe to do it, or if just kind of general home rule municipality powers allow us to do it.
And is Bernalillo home rule?
I know that Albuquerque is. I'm not sure if Bernalillo is.
Okay. Yeah. So I think Bernalillo did this because they were given the authority by the legislature through the New Mexico Quality Control Act. So I guess it's an outstanding question about whether we would need the same, but I sort of think we do. So we'll wait to hear more about that as you and Aaron sort that out. All right, questions from the committee about this? Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Kyle, for all the information, very helpful. What I didn't see in your presentation was any repeat offenders, as you know, what we're looking at now is calling for increased fines. So did we notice any repeat offenders?
So it does look like there were 7 repeat offenders out of the 79.
7 of them, and was that just one additional ticket or multiple, more than 2? Or
Chair Romero-Worth, Councilor Rivera, I don't know if it was one person that got 6 more citations. We were just looking to see if there were. Well, actually, I take that back. That is going to be. Let me just double check that. I can't say if it was just one person that got the more, or if it was all 7 different people got it. I apologize for that.
Madam Chair and councilors, it looks like there was a couple different people that received a repeat ticket. There wasn't one person that had more than 2, according to the records I have here.
All right, thank you, Captain. And then can you repeat the figure you gave as far as those that paid the citation versus going to court? I think you said the number, but I wasn't sure.
Chair Romeroworth, Councilor Rivera, I did say a number. It was 20 people decided to just pay the ticket.
All right. And were you able to check if a penalty assessment misdemeanor stays on a record or is part of like an application process for people, if they've ever been convicted of a crime or a misdemeanor? Were you able to look into that?
Chair Romeroworth, Councilor Rivera, I wasn't able to look at that. I just do want to make, I don't think I did a good job last time of explaining this, so I'm gonna attempt it again. Penalty assessment misdemeanor, so this class would be the same as for a speeding ticket or not having your registration stuff, traffic infractions like that. So at the end of the day, it's still a traffic offense. It's kind of a term of art, like I said. And this, by the way, the state in their statutes uses the same terminology. And I think it's to distinguish between, traffic offenses that could result in a jail sentence.
Okay, I think you answered everything else that I had asked about previously. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Other questions from the committee? Councillor Cassett, your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Kyle, for providing that information. Captain Tapia, thank you so much for being here. We did have a number of questions about the process by which somebody receives a violation and how it is determined that they are in violation. Can you provide us more information on that process?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, that's a very good question because this is a perception type of traffic stop, perception enforcement. And perceptions can be very different between me and maybe another officer. It may drive a diesel truck and a Harley Davidson motor vehicle or Harley Davidson motorcycle. The perceptions could be different. Some of them are very easy to identify. The excessive or unusual noise is to where it's super loud, sounding like what's called a straight pipe or no muffler installed. But you do have ones that could be a sports car, could be a large diesel vehicle, or like I said, a motorcycle that's a stock installed muffler that is extremely loud. So the perception is what makes it difficult. But the way the traffic stop would be is if an officer observed a vehicle that they perceived as excessive or unusual noise, they would stop the vehicle, speak with the driver, maybe get an admission that the person had modified their factory exhaust, which would give us, the proof we need to issue a citation. If there's denial, it's very difficult because there's not many officers out there that have the ability to crawl underneath a vehicle to inspect it. We wear many hats, but some of us aren't very mechanically inclined that may not know the difference between a stock or standard muffler device or emissions system installed. So if we could articulate that there was modifications that was creating the excessive or unusual noise, we would issue a citation. If there wasn't enough proof, sometimes we'd issue a written warning or discuss it with the driver to try and get voluntary compliance.
Thank you, Captain Tapia. I believe that's what a lot of us were understanding from, because obviously this is not the first time this has been discussed in the last pandemic. That's my new term for a period of time. So, but I know that this has been an ongoing discussion, and we really, I've heard that a number of times from from the police department that this is one of the many challenges. So if I'm understanding you correctly, so say there is, for example, Harley Davidson that is making a lot of noise. They tend to be noisy motorcycles, is my understanding. I'm not an expert in the motorcycle field by any stretch of the imagination. And that would be considered normal because we know that that factory stock muffler is going to be loud, but you might see a different type of car that you would expect to be quieter. And that would be the difference of someone being pulled over, is essentially a police officer's knowledge of what cars you might expect to hear louder noise coming from as opposed to another one. Am I understanding that correctly?
Councilwoman Cassett, it's still under perception. Is if an officer feels that a motorcycle is excessive or unusual, they can issue a citation to where the owner operator may request the court date and then would have to deal with the city attorney, city prosecutor. They're at municipal court, produce that it is factory or non-modified. But it's hard to make that decision out in the field when it could be something that was not altered.
Okay, thank you. And that helps because I know another conversation that has come up is like, well, do you guys have Doppler readers? And what is the, level of noise that is considered excessive? And that doesn't quite work either from what you're telling me. Am I understanding that correctly?
So none of us have decimal meters issued to us. We don't have them installed. It's very different than a speeding violation where we are trained to use a speed detection device. And that gives us proof that the offender was violating the city ordinance. This one is one where it's very perception based and it's very hard to articulate in a court of law unless we have very clear evidence that a muffler was removed or it was clearly altered.
Okay, thank you, Captain Tapia. I appreciate that. Further information, that was another big question mark from last time. I guess, again, and I will give Councilor Romero Worth the credit for this question of what are we trying to solve here, because there is this component that I understand that a lot of this is really related to drag racing. And so when we are hearing these loud cars driving very quickly around the city, there's also this component of drag racing, which I would assume would also fall under the lines of speeding, of reckless driving. And so there potentially is another avenue to solving this problem that we already have in place. Am I understanding that aspect of this issue correctly as well from your experience?
I would agree with you. A speeding, drag racing, reckless driving, those are moving violations. The muffler being altered is an equipment violation. So if you're looking at on the scheme of priorities, we would prioritize safety violations over noise violations or equipment violations.
And with again, I'm showing my lack of knowledge in this area about modifying your muffler. If you do modify a muffler, is it always loud, or do you have to rev it to make it loud? So when they're drag racing, are they louder because they're going faster and they're revving, or is this kind of always they sound a little bit louder once they have modified that equipment?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, there are some mufflers that will shake your windows at idle. So you don't necessarily have to rev it, but I have been driving around town and had a souped up sports car next to me, and it's very loud sitting at a red light just idling. So it varies. There are upgrades, I guess they would call it, for their cars that would make it very loud or change the pitch of it. But there's also other mufflers that would just replace factory if it was damaged.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I have further questions at this time. This is it feels to me a little bit of this is not a cut and dry issue by any stretch of the imagination is really what I'm seeing here. And as Councilor Romero-Worth brought up last time, I think that looking at the emissions testing piece and where we could go there, that sounds like for some of this preventative work of preventing these modified equipment violations, that if we're going to be looking at prevention that way, that's something that I think that we really need to further explore addressing this issue. Yeah, I'll go ahead and yield the floor for the moment unless I think of something else. Thanks so much.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Captain Tapia, for being with us. It's helpful to have that perspective from like on the ground perspective. And I think just based on, one of the questions I had about how many citations were issued between the time this actual ordinance started from 2010 through 2017, at least, there were only 15 citations. And then I think it went up when you all did that operation. What did we call it? Sorry, we had different names for it.
Slow and quiet.
Slow and quiet? Okay, yes. So, and I think that's when it increased. But I guess I'm just curious from your point of view about how someone's at my door. I can't get it. About the piece of how to determine it. And you said it's perception based, but I may have to get this really quick.
Why don't you take it and I'll ask a question while you go. Captain Tapia, thank you for being with us. So you all don't have decibel readers. Do other police departments have them? Is that something that, if we wanted to, we could equip police with decibel readers and, you could, and I don't know, I know we have, I think our code already says you, sorry, I've got a puppy getting tied up in the computer string. So we already say we have a noise ordinance, and if you go above a certain decibel level, then you're in violation. Would that apply to these mufflers? And could we, if you were equipped with these things, theoretically, hypothetically, is this something you could be charged with enforcing? I mean, I know you're going to tell me you got enough to do, you don't need anything else, but just curious, like whether other police departments at the local level do this.
Madam Chair, I don't know if there's any other agencies that do equip their officers with decimal readers. I mean, we can certainly do that, but then we'd run into the problem. There's nothing in the city ordinance that gives, in this muffler ordinance, that gives a decimal limit. So we wouldn't be able to articulate that it's at a certain limit that would apply to this specific ordinance.
Right. So I guess what I'm wondering is, it goes back to what's the problem we're trying to solve, right? Is it the noise of these things? And so therefore, if we did something to our code to say, if your muffler is above this noise level, then, and you're recorded with a decibel reader, then you would get ticketed. Or what we're doing now is we say you can't have an altered muffler, period. And then we're into this perception problem. So I'm just trying to figure out like different ways of solving this really. And also wondering, what other cities do. I did not too long ago travel through a city where they very prominently said what their noise level was. And they said, you can't be above whatever the decibel level was. So I just curious, whether there are other paths to getting it. If it's drag racing, that's one thing. If it's noise level, that's one thing. If it's altered muffler, and we don't like altered mufflers because they pollute and they, also make noise, that's another thing. But then again, we get into this perception thing. So I don't know. I'm just exploring what options we might have.
Madam Chair, I'm a fan and advocate of the emissions testing. I feel that it would help us in many more areas other than just mufflers. It would help us fix the burnt out brake lights, broken windshields, and many other issues that cars may have.
Okay. I'll go back to Councilwoman Villarreal now that she's answered the door and let whoever was there in.
It was a police officer. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't. It wasn't. Actually, I had the same question about the decibel readings because, constituents of ours had said, well, why don't they just install the decibel readings and on your vehicles and be done with that, and then you can track that. But you're saying that this well, I hear two things. One, that this decibel limit isn't established in this ordinance, and also that there would be a need for training to use those within the department.
Yes, we would have to have some sort of training and knowledge of how the system, even on a simple level, works to be able to articulate in a court of law. And then it would have to be something that would be accepted as testimony based off of this equipment. With our radar devices, we're required to recertify them every 2 years. That gives us a certificate. So these decimal readers may need to have a company that will validate and calibrate, certify the devices for the courts.
Do you know what they also cost by chance?
I wouldn't know where to guess what the cost would be.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I was wondering. Well, I mean, it's not budgeted right now either. So I guess the other thing is, in your experience and what you're seeing with what our officers are focused on, or what they're seeing out there in the community, would you say that there's more issues with drag racing, i.e. reckless driving and or speeding, like you said, moving violations, versus loud mufflers, equipment related issues?
Well, Councilwoman Villarreal, I was a traffic officer for over 7 years early in my career here. And in those 7 years, my primary job was to enforce traffic law. And I wrote a lot more speeding, reckless, and moving violations than I ever wrote for equipment violations. And that is solely because that is where the risk is. That is the safety concern. A muffler will not injure somebody, but someone reckless driving will. And so that is the focus when I was a traffic officer. And
that's a good point.
Yeah, in the data of citations, looking at since 2018, we didn't increase our muffler citations until 2020 when we did specifically that operation in the downtown area, where we went from 1 citation in 2019 to 57 citations in 2020. And then as of September 10th this year, we are at 31 citations. If I don't have it here, I know I did pull it for one of the recent presentations we did, but we had a lot more traffic citations for speeding than what we have for muffler citations.
The other issue I thought was kind of at that high level too, are running red lights. I see that way more just being out on the street. So in this same ordinance, we're actually not increasing that piece. It's actually still 25 as a violation of red light running. So I guess I kept thinking that's a bigger issue as it relates to safety versus increasing the violations, the citations for something that you said is a perception type violation. And so that gives me pause, because if it's someone's perception, then it's subjective and it's not real clear cut. And so that's what's hard about this. I guess I wanted to hear from you. Do you think increasing the citation amount would be a deterrent for situations related to muffler noise and modifications?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I do think it will have an impact. It will not solve the problem, though some of these drivers are spending hundreds to thousands of dollars to muffler systems. If they keep getting hit with $300 fines, they may think twice before continuing with that vehicle.
Okay. However, then you said, I mean, just looking at the numbers, it isn't something that's focused on. So I guess the number, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the numbers of people that are actually getting citations and the priority of your team. I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of figure out what makes sense as a deterrent Do you have any other suggestions you think would help for this particular issue that we're dealing with? That's just been, I guess, just exploded even more because of the pandemic. I mean, I don't ever remember growing up and having this issue, or that it being such a big issue or an issue that we hear a lot from our constituents about. So any thoughts on that, about like being more proactive or doing, like, trying to figure out a way to, as they say, offer the carrot versus the stick approach? Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I think the only thing that would help us in enforcing more traffic violations is more staffing. And we all know we're working on trying to increase that, but staffing is essential for proactive preventative patrols.
Okay. I'll yield the floor. I'm not really sure what to do about this, based on the information you provided us, and also that Mr. Hibner also provided us. Thank you for doing that research. It was helpful to get a bigger picture. So I don't know, I'll yield the floor for now. Think about this more.
I see Director Ochoa popped in. Did you want to make some comments here in the discussion we've been having?
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you, Captain Tapia. I would just say that, you know, the emissions angle and the capacity to address moving violations would be my two requests of the council in terms of helping us to address this from different angles than the decibel level. And, you know, capacity to address speeding violations will be enhanced with increased staffing, as well as technological solutions to that issue as well.
I just lost my train of thought. Waiting for it to come back. I guess I really would like us to explore having some sort of program, maybe through the county, and it maybe doesn't have to be emissions either. Maybe it just has to be that, you know, when you get your vehicle registered, and maybe it's a statewide thing, you have to pass an inspection of your vehicle, which means it captures a whole bunch of things, right? You can't have an altered muffler, you can't have a broken windshield, you can't have the license plate covering on the back of your car so that, you know, so that officers can't see the numbers on your license plate. You can't have tinted windows beyond that are darker than what state law says. It seems to me that having some sort of program where you had to have your vehicle inspected would solve a whole host of things, a whole host of problems that we need to do something about. And I guess I'd rather see us do that than this, especially when we are not giving out tickets, you know, other than under these special operations. I just, and I hate the idea of, you know, again, I think we need to pay attention to our fines and fees and make sure that we're not having unintended consequences. So those are a few of my remaining concerns. And I think we need to look at some other ways of solving this problem. So with that, I see Councillor Cassett has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You actually began to touch on the question that I forgot to ask for Captain Tapia. You know, when I'm looking at the current ordinance, it says every motor vehicle shall at all times be equipped with a muffler in good working order and in constant operation to prevent excessive or unusual noise, and no person shall use a muffler cutout, bypass, or similar device. And one of the questions that I had last time had to do with individuals who may not necessarily have the financial ability to fix a loud muffler that has become loud because of just wear and tear on the car and just not able to get that fixed. And if it's not necessarily a safety issue, they may choose not to fix that one and would rather go for something that makes sure that their car is safe. And there are concerns there, of course, environmentally and with the emissions and those components. But in your experience, are you seeing a lot of citations where that is the situation, that it's simply they haven't modified it, it's just an older car, or maybe something's happened and they haven't been able to fix it. And so it's making excessive noise or smoke?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Cassette, I haven't had the chance to review every single one of these citations we've issued, but in my experience and what I have seen, it appears it's more of aftermarket modification. Now, there are some older vehicles that may get damaged and start throwing smoke. That's a lot easier to spot and pull over when a car is shooting out a bunch of black smoke from the back. But more so, it's the trend that started in 2020, the trend of large groups of people starting to modify their exhaust systems to make them really loud or very deep, high-pitched, different systems.
So do you think that the modification is a new trend, or just the utilization of those cars on our streets because our streets were empty? Because I think that we were all kind of assuming the latter, that all, people were like, hey, empty streets, let's drive really fast on them and make a lot of noise. But do you think that there's actually been an increase in people who have been wanting to make these modifications to their cars, or do we not know?
From the beginning of time, people have modified their mufflers. In the 60s and 70s, they put the cherry bombs on. I was guilty in high school. I put a loud muffler on my car when I was in high school to annoy everybody. And then I grew up. But it's always been a trend. People like to have loud cars.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I have more questions, or really, I think where I'm struggling is that I feel like this is there's a larger situation, there's a larger issue, and that there needs to be a more comprehensive plan of action here. And I think that that's where I'm really struggling with this. And to Councilwoman Villarreal's point of like, well, we're raising this one up this much, but what about, running red lights, which is fatal in some instances. And so I think, yeah, that's where I'm just kind of running into some of these challenges, and also the way that citations are made, that there really is this perception piece. And in some cases it's obvious, in some cases it's not. It just feels like there's more that we need to dig here. And I really understand where the sponsors are coming from, because I think that we all are at a little bit of a, we're hearing this from constituents. I know I'm on one of the routes, I got Rodeo and Camino Carlos Rey and Governor Miles. So definitely I hear them every night at 11:30. That's, very common. And I understand the frustrations. And so, but I'm not sure that this is the most comprehensive solution for us at this time. And it feels just a little bit piecemeal. So that's where I'm really struggling with this. As Captain Tabia said, if this is a trend that people are doing, they may be deterred from utilizing those cars, or may get them, fixed back, unmodified, if they're concerned about the dollars. But yeah, I don't know. I'm torn on this one. Sorry, now I'm rambling. I will yield the floor and stop rambling.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think we need to take a look at this, do some more work, and come back with something else would be my preference. I don't know. I don't see any more hands up. Anybody want to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move to deny consideration of this bill at this time.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to deny approval, essentially not approve, correct, counselors? This bill at this moment. So and we have a second, can we get is there a discussion on that? And if not, can we get a roll call.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
and Chair Romero Worth.
Yes. All right.
Right.
That motion passes. We will not be approving this bill tonight in its current form. We will move on then. We don't have an executive session. Do we have matters from staff? Any matters from staff? Matters from the committee? Matters from the chair. Our next meeting is Wednesday, November 3rd. And with that, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your work on this, and we'll see you at the next